Edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. Alex, it's been a week since we've done the show. Alex just got back from Vegas out at the Shrine Bowl. So we have that to cover tonight. Obviously, two very important items on the show. Like I said, Alex just got back from Vegas, so we'll cover that. But first, today's biggest news story. It's dominated the news cycle. It did a year ago today as well. But Tom Brady has officially announced he's retiring for good. 23 seasons, 10 Super Bowl appearances, 7 rings, you know it. The most clutch athlete of all time. I would say the best to ever play football. I would say the best athlete ever, greatest athlete ever. You can go on and on. So yeah, Brady in his social media post today announces his retirement. Alex, initial thoughts on the GOAT finally calling it a career?
My initial thought, not to throw our graphics team under the bus, but we can put a Patriots logo back behind him now. This chapter is over. He's a Patriot. I don't know if he's going to do the one-day contract or not, but like his Wikipedia picture is back to him on the Patriots, and we can start reclaiming Tom Brady first and foremost. We did the whole mushy thing last year, and I'm very glad Brady said that he didn't want a second hullabaloo because I think we said last year what needed to be said, but on him, I mean, we'll never see anything like it because not only at his peak did he do it better than anybody else has ever done it. His peak lasted longer than most people's entire careers. He won 2 Super Bowls 19 years apart. There's only 20 players that played more than 19 outside of Brady that played more than 19 years in the NFL, period. So guys struggle to play that long. His championship window was that long. When you talk about the great winners in modern sport, I said this after he won the 6th one, that completely cleared him of, not that there was really any debate, but completely cleared him of like Montana and those guys. Now, I mean, it's him, it's Jordan, it's Muhammad Ali, it's Michael Phelps.
Good call.
Wayne Gretzky, like that's the class.
Yeah.
And really, I think he's at the top of that class. It's probably him and Ali. And then if you want like the next group, let's say he'd hung around and won one more. Now you got to go back to like the Colosseum and like the ancient Romans. And like you talk about the greatest athlete, the most accomplished, the most successful athlete on this planet, in the history of this planet. But in the modern era, to me, it's him and Ali leading that class. And the funny thing about it for me, like it's no secret, and I talk about this all the time. Like I fell in love with the game of football watching the 2001 Patriots and the early 2000s Patriots. And I am here on this show doing what I do for a living because of those teams. And if not for Tom Brady, so it was funny before Super Bowl 49, I was in college and my dad texted me, a picture of me and my brother watching Super Bowl 36. Said, think about it. If they don't win that game, he goes, you're probably like, a general studies major somewhere. And, you're going to be doing some desk job. And it's like nothing against that. But
right.
I'm one example where Tom Brady and those teams impacted my life tremendously. I'm hardly alone in that. The heavy majority of people in New England, especially my age, our age, have had our lives impacted in somewhat major ways by what Tom Brady led. And he probably understands that to an extent. I would think when you're that notable, you sort of get it comes with the territory, but he'll never know the half of it, how much he 100%. Truly impacted people. And I wish I could just sort of tell him, but that, it beyond the football legacy. I mean, just the legacy he lives in this region and the impact he had on this region, the whole run of titles, right? It's not a coincidence that all 4 teams started winning at once because we don't necessarily think of them this way, but they're competing businesses. At the end of the day, costs $300 for a family of 4 to go to a game. And maybe that's being generous now, but like,
at one time. Yeah.
Are you spending that on the Patriots? Are you spending that on the Red Sox? You spend that on the Celtics, on the Bruins. So the Patriots go on this tear, Red Sox look at that, say we need to get serious. They go out, they make those moves in 04. They trade for Kurt Schilling. They, trade Nomar.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden the Celtics realize what's going on. They really lock in. They go get the big three. And then the Bruins double down in 11. And it all kicked off, obviously, with Tom Brady. So we'll talk a lot about the kind of player he was, but just his impact on this area to me is outstanding. Honestly, hang on, I want to pull this up.
I never really thought of it that way, though, until you just said it. Just the competing businesses and the fact that they all sort of went on this run as soon as the Patriots did. It's like, that's probably a very big reason why, is because of what Tom Brady did.
So somebody tweeted this earlier. This is Sean Jovi on Twitter. I thought it was a great tweet. When you read the comments under a post about Tom Brady, you discover how many lives he's ruined, absolutely destroyed, made their fathers cry, slayed all their heroes, haunted their nights for decades. The boogeyman, stacked bodies, F his stats, count the lives lost. And that's the other thing about Tom Brady. Like I kind of tweeted this earlier. Like just and it sort of goes to what I was saying before too, right? How many people in New York, in Buffalo, in Miami, in Indianapolis never got to experience what we experienced, and their lives are different for it because of this guy?
I have a friend that is hurt so bad by Tom Brady that he's a Colts fan. He's still, to this day, texts us every single day that Peyton Manning is better than Tom Brady.
I have a friend who's a Bills fan who is taking today as some sort of victory lap that Brady's out of the league, and it's ludicrous. But the other interesting thing, and this is what happens when I'm thinking about this all day and we do the show however many hours later. Like just kind of the wordage in there, right? Like count the bodies. I've always had this sort of thought about Tom Brady too, and this feels like, there's not really a time to do this. It's a random thought, except for right now. Everybody likes to compare Tom Brady to Darth Vader, right? When we do like the fictional movie characters. In Darth Vader, and I know some people do the Terminator and things like that. The one for me, if you want to sum up like Tom Brady's essence to somebody who maybe doesn't understand football, Tom Brady is Michael Myers from Halloween, because he's just this, throughout his career, he was just this presence that even when he wasn't like there, you could count on.
Yeah, he's always around.
How many teams playing the Patriots back in the heyday, when they were on offense, Tom Brady's not on the field, but when they were on offense, would screw up and overthink things because they knew Tom Brady was over there on the other sideline. Super Bowl 51, 28-3, right?
Yep.
And the other reason I love the Michael Myers comparison for Tom Brady is, like, how many times in those movies, right? He gets shot. He's knocked off a balcony. He gets electrocuted. He gets set on fire. He gets blown up. He gets hanged. He gets hit by a car. He gets set on fire again. And he just, every single time, he comes back stronger. Yep. He comes back more aggressive. He comes back with a vengeance. This is a super random thought. I'm not even that big of a horror movie guy. I'm really not. But
I'm not a big movie guy, but
there's in the trailer for one of the recent Halloween movies, I think it was Halloween Kills or Halloween Forever or whatever. There's like, and Mike, you probably saw the trailer. There's a shot where, so it's in the movie before, like they trap him in a house and they lock him in the basement, Michael Myers, and they burn the house down on top of him. And again, this is like, all right, he's definitely dead. But it's Michael Myers in the shot in the trailer, in the shot in the, like at the start of the next movie, he just walks out of the burning house, just fire around him, just holding an axe, just like dead-eyed. And it's like, that's like, when I saw that in the trailer, I don't know why. My first thought when I saw that was, holy crap, that's what it feels like watching Tom Brady take the field. Is like, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. He's going to figure out a way to get you in the end. So that was a bunch of different direction, but these are the thoughts that have been bubbling.
Similarly, and I know you're a Breaking Bad guy. It reminds me, I guess he doesn't make it at the end, but it's that feeling you have when they try and kill Gus, or they kill Gus, and they blow up the hospital room, and everyone's like, he's gone. And then all of a sudden he walks out and tightens his tie, and you're like, oh my God, he somehow survived. And like that's how it feels with Tom Brady. Spoiler alert: Gus ends up collapsing. But that's how it feels. It feels like he always stuck around. He always continued to fight another day. I guess. What do you think now of the quarterback carousel that's going to happen in the NFL? Because a lot of people thought that he might join Josh McDaniels in Vegas. A lot of people thought he may go to Miami, even maybe come back here. So there's a lot of moving parts now. Derek Carr's still on the trade block. Tua looks like he's going back to Miami. The Jets are open. So what kind of impact do you think that has?
So I honestly didn't think about the quarterbacks a ton today.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Carr to Tampa is interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to try to stick it out with this core. Now, this is a great chance for them to just hit the reset button and rebuild and sell off and tank. And if I'm to them, that's what I'm doing. If they want to try to capitalize on this window with like Mike Evans, Donovan Smith, right, guys who are logical trade pieces versus letting them walk.
Right.
I look at Derek Carr. I think that's an interesting one. Jimmy Garoppolo to the Raiders then makes all the sense in the world. Those are kind of the two I thought of. The real interesting one for me, and as it relates to the Patriots, is the wide. I guess it's not a wide receiver carousel, but
yeah, I saw your tweet about this.
Mike Evans should be available at this point. You know, if they're going to tank, which they should, they're $55 million over the cap, $56 million over the cap. Most of that they can't move. $31 million is tied up in Brady. That's it. That's flat. And I know the cap can be manipulated, but you have to do things to manipulate it. Right. And trading Mike Evans is something you could do to manipulate it. So, you know, does he become available? Would the Patriots be in? I don't know. I've seen very mixed opinions today. I think in a down year, and what was considered a down year, he caught 77 passes for 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's a pretty freaking good down year. Now, he's going to turn 30. Some people wonder about his motor, about his drive. But
the guy's had 1,000 yards in every season he's played. I think he's got some sort of motor.
I would take him. I think the concerns are overrated. I don't think they're unwarranted, but I think they're overrated. That being said, I am a little worried about the age. The age concerns me more than the motor. But
fair.
Even if the Patriots aren't interested, somebody's going to be. There's not going to be 31 teams that get called about a Mike Evans trade and hang up the phone. So that's one less team that's interested in Jerry Jeudy. That's one less team that's interested in DeAndre Hopkins, that's interested in Keenan Allen, that's interested in any of these names we've talked about, right? T. Higgins. A lot of overlap in that game between Mike Evans and T. Higgins.
Right.
So
I would just love T. Higgins here. I know it's off topic, but
I've said my point on that. I don't think he's going to be available. But
yeah, I know.
I see some people bringing up Chris Godwin in the chat. His contract, they can't really. I mean, they could trade him, but they don't open up any cap.
It doesn't help Tampa. Yeah.
Right. He's signed for multiple years. So if you're going to the thing is with Evans, you're doing Tampa a favor. He's probably going to come cheap, 2nd round pick.
Right. Yeah.
If you're trading for Chris Godwin, you actually have to give the Bucs something.
Right.
So I don't think that one's as realistic, but that was my instant reaction actually more in the quarterback carousel was the very least now it becomes a little bit more of a buyer's market at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. My other thing, I guess, on Brady is just, and I don't want to go into, I'm not going to speculate on the guy's marriage and the marital problem or whatever the case may be, but I think what I noticed, and it kind of resonated in his video today, and I read it from Jeff Darlington as well from ESPN, who's close to Brady. He's sort of he's in a little bit of that circle, was just that it seems like Brady might finally realize that he can still make an impact without throwing a football. Like for so long, he was always so drawn into, I need to play because I belong on the field and I'm a winner. And, my life's not complete if I'm not out there throwing touchdowns and screaming at 25-year-old defensive backs and making sure that the second level's blocked up so that all that stuff that he loved so much. I think this year finally got to him. Obviously, the family stuff's a struggle and all that. Darlington reports he lost 15 pounds and he was just not into it. But I think he probably realizes now that he can go into broadcasting. He can do basically anything else and succeed at it because of his name and the name that he built on football alone. And I think that probably is what finally hit him and was like, look, I don't need to do this on the field anymore. So he's the GOAT. There's not really much else to say beyond that. I think.
Well, I mean, I saw some people talking about this in the chat. This is the one other interesting thing. When it comes, I love talking about with Tom Brady, and it's a Patriots thing too. It's not just a Brady thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, guys, I apologize. I'm spacey. I got back from the Shrine Bowl at like 6:30 a.m.
Yeah,
this morning, and
we're gonna get into it after this, baby.
thanks to Tom, I didn't get a ton of time to sleep this morning. It's okay though. Like I said, he's done a lot for me. I don't mind.
Yes.
Um,
You gotta pay it back.
Some people, and I wish I could pull it up. I don't have access to the chat right now for some reason. But how many dynasties were prevented because Tom Brady? And somebody mentioned the Seahawks.
Yep.
Somebody mentioned somebody mentioned the Falcons. I don't think they would have been a dynasty. The big ones are obviously the Seahawks, the Colts, the early Rams, like the greatest show on turf, who were dynasty-ish, but didn't get that punctuating win.
Right.
The Chargers, a lot of people talk about those Chargers teams. Like if they hadn't had to go through Brady with Rivers and Tomlinson and Shane Merriman, who was a really good player. The one to me that always gets slept on, and this is kind of a goofy take, and I know people sort of roll their eyes at it, but I do believe it.
This should be good.
Is the early 2000s Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
So and this becomes kind of a fun what if.
Are you talking like Tony Sparano, Chad Pennington Dolphins? Like those?
No, guys? I'm talking like Dave Wannstedt. Wannstedt Dolphins. So I want to pull the roster up here. Like in 2003, right? And so this is obviously a very different era of the NFL. But think about what the NFL was in 2003. It was smash mouth football, run the ball, play good defense, all of that. They had Ricky Williams, who was like back when having a stud back mattered. They had arguably the best back in the league.
Yep.
And then Travis Miners, his backup wasn't bad. In terms of receivers, they had Chris Chambers was a good player. Randy McMichael could play. Rondé Gadsden, Donald Lee. And then, I mean, how many Hall of Famers were on that defense? Zach Thomas, Junior Seau, Sammy Knight, Brock Marion, Jason Taylor, Patrick Surtain. They had a young Patrick Surtain on that team. Like,
all right.
They didn't have the quarterback. It was Jay Fiedler, who was fine. Like, I don't think Jay Fiedler was bad. I don't know that he was great.
He's what Belichick thought he could win with. The top 15 to 20-ish quarterback.
But, like, if those teams don't have to go through the Patriots in terms of the division, because think about it, they're Miami, and, like, it was hard. Like, they're either not winning the division or they're having to go on the road to Indy every year because they couldn't overcome the Patriots. If the Patriots aren't in their division, that team, I don't know that they win multiple Super Bowls, but they have a much stronger legacy. And the other interesting what if of this that I love, what if the NFL, when they did the divisional realignment in 2002, like they should have, put the Dolphins in the AFC South instead of the Colts? And look, there was a reason they kept it the way they did. They were trying to preserve historic rivalries, and like I understand why they did it. Mm-hmm. But if they just go geographically, that Dolphins team, which I just rattled off, all those Hall of Famers on defense, Ricky Williams, they get to go through a Titans team that was fine. Like that Titans team wasn't bad. They had Steve McNair, they had Eddie George, but they weren't as good. A Jaguars team that was atrocious. And a Texans
Jacksonville Jaguars.
No, it was like in between Brunell and Leftwich and Garrard.
Oh God, okay.
I don't even remember who the quarterbacks were, but they were bad. Yeah. And then a Texans team that's a expansion team.
Right.
So the Dolphins get that run, and we get Brady Manning twice a year in the division.
Yeah.
Like, that is one of my all-time favorite NFL what-ifs. But didn't happen, and Brady held them off. Yep. Brady held the Dolphins off, and so we said Seahawks, Rams, Chargers, Colts, Dolphins. I don't know if you have any others.
I have a similar crazy one to the Dolphins, and it's Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez's Jets. Like, those teams, they made 2 AFC championships, and they sort of got through the Patriots at one point, and it was really more so like the Steelers that stopped them, and I forget the other team that beat them in the title game, but
I think it was the Ravens, right?
Yes, it was the Ravens. Those teams were good too. You had a rookie quarterback, Sanchez, on a rookie deal who played good for what he had to do with that team. I think they had Santonio Holmes after his first run with the Steelers.
No, I don't. Was he still there? This would be the 2010 Jets. Oh, maybe they did.
I think they had Santonio Holmes.
Santonio Holmes they had. I'm thinking of Santana Moss. They
Oh
did
yeah,
have
okay.
Santonio Holmes. You're right.
Santonio Holmes, their defense with Bart Scott, like those teams were legit, and Rex Ryan was a
Yeah.
good coach to start. I don't know how much the Patriots necessarily they overshadowed that team for sure. So that's kind of what I thought with the Dolphins too. But I had another Brady thought. It's not coming to mind right now. So what I'll do when I try and think about it is talk about our friends at HelloFresh, Alex. HelloFresh, it is the new year, and New Year's goals are here, and so is HelloFresh to help you achieve them. Skip the grocery store and take time to take control of your time and budget with delicious recipes delivered right to your door. Skip that snowy schlep to the grocery store and stock up using the HelloFresh Market. Simply add additional items to your weekly order and they'll arrive at your doorstep along with your meals. You can do this by going to HelloFresh.com/CLNS65. Use code CLNS65 for 65% off plus free shipping. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/CLNS65. Use code CLNS65 for 65% off plus free shipping. All right. Any final wrap up thoughts on Brady before I pick your tired brain about what happened out
No,
in Vegas?
I think I got my piece in. Hang on, let me just. I got my notes over here. So
Perfect. Let's do it.
transition.
Yes. Shrine Bowl. Alex was out at the Shrine Bowl, covering the bowl for 95 Patriots.com. Him and Evan did their Catch 22 podcast out there every day. The Patriots, obviously, they coach the West team. Plenty happened. I was on the film every day, breaking some of that down. It's on my Twitter if you want to check it out. But Alex was there. He saw the coaching in person. A lot of buzz around the team as far as how they were as coaches, as a staff. It seemed like they were really invested, Alex, from what I understand. They wanted
Yep.
to win the game. So I guess peel the curtain back a little bit from what you saw from the staff and just how they operated with the teams out there.
So it's really interesting talking to the players. The first chance we got to talk to them was on Friday, like late Friday, and the first practice of the week was Saturday. So they'd had meetings, but they hadn't been on the field. And I remember like Travis Dye in particular, running back from USC, and you can hear this interview, all my interviews on 98.5thesportshub.com with these players. I asked him what it was like what's just early impressions of the Patriots coaching staff. He said they're here to win. It's an all-star game, and they're here to win, and that really kind of carried over throughout the week. The level of intensity, the attention to detail you saw in the practices was not typical from an all-star game format. And I don't necessarily think the players didn't like it. I think some of them really appreciated it, getting NFL coaching. I think they were just sort of surprised.
Yeah.
And there's probably a couple reasons for that. One, I just think they're all super competitive. Two, though, like this is the advantage of coaching this game. If you're considering drafting one of these guys, you need to make sure he can be coached the way you want him to be coached.
100%.
And yeah, you get, you interview prospects, teams interview prospects here or there, but they've never had a chance to really put a guy through their system and see how he handles it. For example, there was another day, Monday, where it was 40 degrees and raining. And we're in Vegas, but it was 40 degrees and raining.
Right.
And Troy Brown said after practice, it was guys are going to have to play in this. They're going to have to practice in this if we draft them. And they got to see who did what. So
mails it in too. Who's like, who doesn't care?
Right. Who handled it? Who didn't? I think,
right.
They turned up the intensity to kind of weed guys out. Yep. And so that was big from an individual point of view. I know that's kind of what people really want.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien stole the show day one. He was right there with the quarterbacks and receivers, very vocal, very passionate. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's a quarterback for the West team from UCLA, I really liked his week.
Mm-hmm.
Said that it was intense, but very helpful. Working with O'Brien and Belichick, too, spent some of that period with those guys. O'Brien only did one day, but he was, again,
but he made the most of it, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then Belichick was kind of with the quarterbacks and receivers early on day one. And after that, he sort of just roved around. But there were a lot of instances. There's videos of him working with Brenton Cox, a linebacker from Florida, Truman Jones, linebacker from Harvard, Eric Scott, a cornerback from Southern Mississippi, one of the Rutgers safeties, like just hands-on, literally with Brenton Cox. I assume most people have seen that video.
That's an awesome video.
Literally hands-on, grabbing him, coaching him through a pass rush move. So he seemed very engaged in that regard. He was out there 3 of the 4 days. We didn't see him on Monday, the rainy day. And then
is Belichick checked out? Next on Felger and Mass.
As for the rest of the staff, guys were at new positions. We kind of knew that coming in, but they were going back and forth. Like I know Vinny Sunseri,
Mhm.
even though he was the wide receivers coach this week, met with some of the running backs as like to do prospect interviews, right? So things like that, I think there was crossover there, but overall the staff seemed engaged. They seemed refreshed. Um, the other guys, I know the guy like the other side people I know about. Cam McCord was there. He was
Mhm.
very involved with the special teams units. Joe Houston, who was the assistant special teams coach during the season, was the coordinator this week. He ran the drills, but Cam was very vocal, very hands-on.
The teacher that he is, right?
Right.
Yep.
Joe Judge was there, but he didn't really do much in terms of coaching. There was one period he sort of spent with the offensive line, but besides that, he was just back in an observing role, sort of like Gerard Mayo and Steve Belichick were in that, supervisory role. You know, think about where Bill Belichick is during training camp practices, right? Just sort of 30 yards back, taking it all in.
Yep.
That's where Joe Judge was. Matt Patricia, if he was there, we didn't see him.
Okay.
I don't think he was there, but the fact that Belichick, so he's there Saturday, Sunday, and he wasn't there Monday. So we all figured he left. Maybe he went to Mobile for the Senior Bowl,
Yep.
but then he was back there on Tuesday. So I'm hesitant. Like you can't prove a negative, right? I can't say definitively Matt Patricia wasn't there, but if he was, they hit him very well. I didn't
Apparently
see a sign
Ryan
of him at all.
apparently Ryan Wendell was out there interviewing for the offensive line coach job, so maybe that could have been involved as well.
Yeah, they brought Wendell and Clem. Both came
Yep.
out to interview. That was the report. So yeah, maybe that's not reporting anything, just my guess. That's where Bill was on Monday.
Yeah.
And maybe, Bill O'Brien, if he didn't leave early, maybe he was a part of that,
Right.
but did not see Matt Patricia there at all.
Interesting. I have a question
Yeah.
about Brian Belichick because as I'm sure some of you saw, I interviewed Trey Dean the third, who was out at the Shrine Bowl this week, and he talked about
Everybody check that out.
yeah, it's on our channel at Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. You can check that out. But in talking to him in our one-on-one, he mentioned Brian by name and called him Coach Brian and was like he's there, he's hands-on, he was loud and in a good way, he was a good teacher. So what did you notice, because he was in the defensive coordinator position this week, so what did you notice from Brian specifically? Anything?
Yeah, he was all over the place. He was working
Hmm.
with, I think he was technically the linebackers coach, I want to say, in
Okay.
addition to being the co-DC, but with the linebackers, he's with the defensive line, he's with the corners, he's with the safeties. He worked with everybody. He had one of the most involved roles, I would say. Troy Brown, obviously, is the head coach, and Ross
Hmm.
Douglas were both very involved. But on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know that anybody was doing more than Brian Belichick. I thought he had a great week. He seemed to be enjoying the hell out of it, too, for whatever that's worth. Like, I thought he was having a really good time. And not
Yeah.
to say that other coaches weren't, but I know like Troy was. Troy talked about how valuable the experience was, but Brian Belichick just sort of had that football guy mentality all week. So,
Well, you think about, I don't want to say people compare them, but you think of Steve and Brian together as Belichick's sons on the staff, and as much as Steve Belichick's into it, I don't really see that, emotional, like, rah rah guy, where you kind of see that with Brian a little bit more, I think.
yeah, I think that's fair. I think Brian maybe is a bit, and now look, he's a little further down the depth chart. Maybe once
Of
he
course.
moves up, that he kind of because Steve, I think, has kind of tightened up a little bit the last couple of
Yeah.
years, buttoned up a little bit. Um, as a lot of it, not just Bill Sons, as a lot of coaches do as they move
Right.
up the ladder here, and players do as they move up the ladder here. Look at Mac Jones' press conference, rookie, beginning of rookie year versus this year. But yeah, Brian, I thought really just threw himself into this. And that was cool to see. It was great to see him get his chance.
Yeah, that's cool. You think of someone who, may not be directly involved. I mean, he's a position coach, so he's not really involved with much, I guess, game planning. He's more, a teacher like we want a cord to be. So,
Right.
good to see him get ingrained there. So let's talk players. What you saw from all of them. I want to start with everyone's favorite. He's on the cover of this podcast, the featured image, and Zay Flowers from BC. Wide receiver. He only practiced one day, I believe, but after what I saw from a few tapes of Hodges Tomlinson, I would say Zay Flowers was the highest, the top prospect at this thing out there. And what did you see from him on day one? And What do you think about the Patriots actually picking him at 14 if it's ever a possibility? Because that continues to get, turned out a little bit. I think that's a little bit too high for them. We talked about it last week, but what'd you see from Flowers and what do you think of it?
So he was excellent that one day. And I love the mentality too, because he didn't practice the first day. He was out there, and I'll give him credit too. Like Hodges Tomlinson said he was there to interview, and I didn't see him on the field. He was there, one day he was there, sorry,
Yeah.
in a sweatshirt. But the days Zay didn't practice, he was out there and he was involved.
Yep.
And I should say the same thing about Travis Dye as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I think Zay got out to the first day, wasn't practicing, kind of got that vibe of, oh, all right, he thinks he knows who he is. And he said, you know what? They want a show, I'll give him a show. And I love that attitude. He put on a show. He really did. He was the one that stood out to me. Like, he was great in team drills and one-on-ones and all that. And he expected that.
Right.
And it's kind of weird to go off an individual drill. I try not to do this a lot because there's not a ton to be gained. But he ran the gauntlet drill, which is that thing they do at the combine where the quarterbacks line up, 10 yards apart from each other. Wide receiver runs down, catch the ball here, drop it, catch the ball here, drop it. And just the way he moved through that, adjusting to the ball, he just, turning his body, he just glided. He never broke stride, and it was just really impressive to see. Now, all right, so as for the Patriots drafting him, I don't see it. I don't see how it's going to happen unless they trade down in the first round, because we do our tiers, right? And in terms of that, like, quick, shifty slot receiver who's not the biggest, Jordan Addison's I still take Addison over Flowers. I think Flowers is
I think so too.
We'll see what happens when they get to the 40s, but I just, Addison's a little more polished. He runs the ball a little bit stronger. And by the way, people are wondering where Jackson Smith-Njigba is on that. He's his own thing. I think he's the best wide receiver in this class.
As do I. But
Jordan Addison should be there at 14. I would be very surprised if he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to take Zay Flowers at 14, why wouldn't you take Jordan Addison?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to me. And then 46 is going to be way too late. He's going to be a first round pick, talking about Zay.
Yeah.
Maybe if he trips up a little bit, you're like Christian Barmore, that move, you trade up in the second round to get him. But the only thing left is his stock's only going to go up.
Yeah,
if he falls that much, it's because he ran a bad 40. And if he ran a bad 40, is that really the guy you want? Because he needs to be fast. So I just don't see how they make it happen unless they trade back in the first round. I will tell you this. So Zay Flowers only practices one day. Patriots are running that Bill O'Brien offense. They need that quick, shifty slot receiver who steps in. Demario Douglas from Liberty.
Okay.
And, we're going to do the tiers. He's a few tiers down. Like after Zay, I get into, Tank Dell in that group. The next tier, and coming into the week, Demario Douglas was a projected late day 3 pick. He should not be anymore. He should be moving up into that top 150 range because he was awesome. Great speed, great quickness. I thought his routes were very crisp. He ran one route. It's on my Twitter. I don't know if it was a deep post and over, whatever you want to call it. He came out of that break so crisp. The cornerback literally fell flat on his face trying to catch up with him. Like, he's you watch the route, Douglas kind of leaning outside, like not really overcommitting, but he's leaning a bit on the corner who has outside leverage. And the corner's kind of feeling it. And then boom, he's cut to the middle of the field and the corner's down. So I thought Demario Douglas was really impressive. If they want that guy, but they want to take a tackle, they want to take a corner, right? With those premium picks, Demario Douglas is a guy who should be on their radar. I thought he was excellent. Trey Flowers was the best player at this event.
Zay Flowers.
Yes.
Trey Flowers, former Patriot. Zay Flowers.
Again, because I'm looking at Trey Dean's name here on the top of my list. We'll get to him, but Zay Flowers may have been the most impressive player at this event, but I don't know that any player exceeded the expectation was for Zay Flowers to be the best player there. There wasn't necessarily room for him to exceed expectations.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Fair. Yeah.
On the offensive side of the ball, I don't know there was a player that exceeded expectations, that did more for their draft stock than Demario Douglas from Liberty did.
Not to take away from Douglas, but the
Okay.
other receiver I want to ask you about, and from what I saw from both watching film and on Twitter and just sort of, watching from afar, was Justin Shorter from Florida,
Yeah.
who's 6'3", 225. I tweeted out a clip of him where he just put a corner on his behind, ran right by him. And the other thing I liked from him, if you go to my Twitter and check out the clip of Shorter, is once he runs out of bounds and gets forced out, he still kept running towards the end zone. So he has he wants to score no matter what. That's what you do in practice. He was impressive this week. A lot of the Florida guys were impressive, like Dean and Cox as well. But what do you think of Shorter? Because I went to look back at him from what he did at Florida, and he wasn't superb in college, but he really looked to show out this week.
Yeah, and I mean the point about Florida, the best schools at this thing were Florida had a great week.
Yeah,
we'll get to Louisville. Louisville had an outstanding week. Michigan State came in strong, and Minnesota had a really good week. On Shorter, so it was the way they set it up was interesting because there were a lot of big corners and big receivers in this game. And I don't, normally I look at a guy like that in a game like this and I would say, well, was he just dominating because of his size? But he was facing a lot of really big corners. So that was interesting. You talk about the motor. There was a play. It was the last play of day 2, and the Patriots did that thing they do in camp, right? Where it's the offense versus the defense.
Yep.
And the losers do push-ups. And he runs a double move, Shorter, beats the corner. The ball's underthrown. He comes back to it, makes a diving catch. Most guys, college guys, you make a diving catch, you're down. That's college football. Shorter knew NFL rules, got right back up, ran into the end zone. Final play practice. Awesome. It's on the Shrine Bowl Twitter. He made a couple other highlight catches during the week. He certainly was impressive. We're going to have to see what he runs. Right. It was really interesting. Me and Evan talked to Eric Galco, who's been on this show, who runs the Shrine Bowl. We talked to him after the last practice, and he said that he thinks both Shorter and Bryce Ford Wheaton, who everybody knows I love, are going to get DK Metcalf comps once we get closer to the draft. Now, that felt a bit lofty for me. Now, if Shorter runs a 4.3, I see it.
Right.
I don't know out there that he had 4.3 speed, but I mean, that's kind of the prototype you're looking at. Big body, strong athlete. Like a lot of people liked A.T. Perry coming into this week from Wake Forest.
Yep.
And he had a really good first day in the non-padded practices. And he's big, like tall, but he's not built. He's not quite as like thin as Tyquan Thornton, but it's a similar build. And so you look at a guy like that, comes out when the pads aren't on. He was excellent. One-on-ones where there's not a ton of contact, he was good, but he sort of disappeared in team. And he got bodied by some bigger receivers. Whereas Justin Shorter, like they're both 6'3", but Justin Shorter's ripped. Justin Shorter, honestly, it took me until the end of the first practice to figure out he was a wide receiver. I kept thinking he was a tight end because he's built like one.
Right.
So that's a guy you look at and you're like, all right, yeah, he's just bullying everybody. Is that the level of competition or is that who he is? So, and that's what this week is about. A guy like Douglas, a guy like Shorter, who maybe weren't on the radar, you don't necessarily make your whole evaluation off of it, but you see them do what they did. And Mike, like you said, you went back and you looked at the Florida tape. All right, this guy wasn't on my radar, but he should be.
Yeah.
What did I miss? Or what is he doing differently? Like with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he totally went to work on his mechanics. He went into the lab and he was throwing the ball with great zip, balls coming out quick. There was that great piece from Connor Orr in SI back in December, Mike. I don't know if you read it, about Brock Purdy. Where he talked about how Brock Purdy, immediately when the season ended, went to work with these throwing specialists and he was doing these special exercises and essentially retraining his brain on how to throw football. And that's part of the reason he got drafted, was teams liked the overhauled mechanics. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's another guy where I'm like, well, he didn't look this good throwing the football on TV. Is it just TV versus in person? Like, what's going on? I go back and look. No, he's definitely working on his mechanics. And he said he's been working with Jordan Palmer, quarterback's coach.
He was out there too, right? Palmer?
Was it? I didn't. He might have been. I honestly wasn't like, he might have been. I might have missed him. I'm not saying he wasn't. But if somebody else reported he was there, I'm not saying that person was.
I thought I saw a picture of him there.
Okay. Well, the fact he's working with Thompson Robinson, he might have
Right.
been. But
Yeah.
this is another thing with Shorter where it's like he dominated. He was excellent. So, okay. Is it the level of competition? Did we miss something on the Florida tape? Is he doing something different? I got to get all into all that. Like, I don't have the answer.
Right.
You probably have a better answer than me. You said you watched him at Florida. I haven't gotten that part yet. I wanted to check in on some of these other guys first, but
Right.
he's that's kind of the biggest thing from this week. For Zay's a first round pick. Zay Flowers is what he is. But these other guys, a lot of these other guys, it's more so just get on the radar.
Right.
Can you get your name on Twitter? Can you get your name on these kind of shows? Obviously, with the scouts is the big one, but it's all
That's how
agenda
scouts.
driven.
That's when you start to look at people. Right. Exactly.
Right. It's all agenda driven, right? So, a guy like Demario Douglas, a guy like Justin Shorter, we'll get to some of these other guys too. They got their names on the radar, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So before we get into some of our next players to talk about, I do want to talk about LinkedIn because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available. It's super easy to post your job on LinkedIn, add your listing and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. We're now into February. It's now February 1. So it's the perfect time to add that right team member to get 2023 going. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back to the bowl. You want to go to the defense? Talk about trading the third. You can check out, like I said, my interview with him on Patriots Press Pass. But he was one of my players to watch coming into the week, and so I was keeping a keen eye on him just with the film and making sure I found that number 0 because I wanted to see if my evaluation was correct. And there's some raw talent there, some mistakes every now and then, but look, he was a monster this week. I feel like he had a pick six every day. He made high quality coverage plays. He doesn't get lost. He has actually pretty sound mechanics, and I thought what I saw, at least on film from Trey Dean, he looked like he shot his stock like through the roof. I thought he was awesome.
Yeah, he had a really good week. I think he's probably pushing day 2 now.
Yeah.
Third round. The thing you love about him is the versatility. And when I talked to him before the week started at practices, he said that's what he wanted to show off. And
Yeah.
he can play deep. He can play box. He can play slot. He can play little on the boundary. What stood out to me, because the Patriots are running their defense, right? Like
right.
It's a shell version of it, but it's the same overall concept.
Right.
They're very well, well, let me say, they're going to need a deep safety one way or the other. Either Devin McCourty retires and they need that guy right away, or he doesn't, but they still need to get ahead of getting the next guy, right? So I really was watching closely for who they were playing deep, and the 3 guys were Trey Dean from Florida. I'm just kind of looking at my notes here. It was so many names to remember during the week. Jordan Howden from Minnesota and Christian Eisen from Rutgers. Like Howden and Eisen had their moments, but Dean, like you said, was just all over the field. There were a number of times where the Patriots coaching staff was like working with him directly. So clearly somebody that it looks like that they had maybe a little bit more of a level of interest in than just any other player out there on the field. He told me he loved it in terms of working with that coaching staff. It goes back to what we talked about earlier. How do these guys respond to this environment? Walking away from this, the question I've been getting a lot is, all right, well, which of the guys are the Patriots picking?
Right.
Trey, if there were odds, if we were setting odds, Trey Dean's at the top of that list, and not in the Vegas taking money from stupid people way. Like, if you're going to say which players most likely to be a Patriot coming out of this game, Trey Dean's at the top of that list.
He told me the same thing, that he loved to play here. He something that as I was prepping and doing some, I guess, prep work before I spoke with him, was just that his coach in Florida, Billy Napier, tries to enable a lot of the ways Coach Belichick coaches. So as far as like camaraderie and team building and different things like that. And so I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, it feels like the same guy. They both have that competitive edge. They want to win. They do it together. We're a team. We're not individuals. So he kind of, he told me a lot of that as well. But I think that will help him, right? Because if you go from a coach who holds your hand in college and then and it's a rude awakening, like we mentioned about the way they coach this week, that's going to turn teams off to guys. So the fact that Dean was there, and when I asked him about playing for the Patriots too, the first thing he said was, well, they win and I want to win and I'm all about winning. So I don't care how I do it. I don't care if I have to play corner. I don't care if I have to play safety. I want to win. So the Patriots haven't won much or as much as they had in the earlier 2000s, but it's a team that's known for winning, and I think Dean would fit here.
Yeah.
Cornerbacks. I don't have actually the one I have written down was Hodges Tomlinson. I thought I saw on tape him get burnt once or twice. I thought he practiced with the East
No.
team
So
on was that not him in a number 1 jersey?
they reassigned his
Inside
number.
at Vegas. Okay.
They reassigned his number after the first day that he said he was going to be practicing.
Okay.
That was Arquan Bush from Cincinnati.
Okay.
The corners for me. So the corner who really stood out was Keitrell Clark from Louisville. He was a baller.
Yep.
He stood out honestly because they started running a bunch of screenplays, and he was on the East team. He wasn't being coached by the Patriots.
Yep.
But I mean, they're watching everybody, right? They're out there. They're seeing what he's doing. He was matched up on. Here I go again. I got so many freaking names, man. I'm just kidding. Antoine Green's a wide receiver from UNC. That was his matchup. Green's 6'3". Clark and Green didn't get the ball. It's Green's the one who's blocking on the screen. Clark ran right through him to blow up the screen. And he was he ran through A.T. Perry. He's running through all these bigger receivers. Then we start seeing him make plays on the ball down the field. Great ball skills. 2 interceptions on the third day. He'd won the day before that. So I'm like, all right, here we go. Big, physical, mean corner. Ball skills, like, sign me up. And then I went, all right, well, I should look how big he is. And I'm thinking he's probably, he didn't look big, but just the way he's playing, I'm like, this guy has to be 6 foot. Weighed in at 5'10", he came in at 5'10", 178.
So he
or
plays
5'11",
big.
sorry, 5'11", 178. So I'm like, all right, wow. Now, he was the best corner there. Honestly, kind of reminded me of Jack Jones, who was there last year and obviously got drafted by the Patriots. But the thing is, they don't, as good as Keitrell Clark looked, they don't need another 5'11" corner.
Yeah, I know.
They need guys like 6'1", 6'2". So now if they were to double dip at corner, let's say they go get one of these guys, Christian Gonzalez, Cam Smith, Joey Porter Jr.
Joey Porter's my guy right now.
Yeah, they're not going to draft him, though. I'll tell you that right now. They're not going to draft him. Would be nice.
It would.
Or Julius Brents would be another one, right?
Yep.
If they go get one of those guys, I love the idea of doubling up with Keitrell Clark early on day 3, which is probably about where he's going to go. They did it last year, right? The 3rd round, 4th round corners. But I don't think as good as he looked, and then I went back and watched the tape. I thought he looked really good at Louisville as well. Just didn't watch a ton of AAC. Louisville was
You weren't dug into the Louisville tape the entire fall?
I was not. But, he got on the radar, and that's a guy, if they're going to double up at corner, I think could be something. All right, so who are the bigger corners that stood out? Miles Brooks from Louisiana Tech.
Yep.
When I talked to him before the week, he was like all the right kinds of competitive. I asked him what it was like facing Power 5 receivers. He was like, I know I've got to prove myself. I got a chip on my shoulder. I thought that was a great answer.
Yep.
Said his favorite player to watch was on the Patriots defense was Marcus Jones. Different kinds of players, but he just appreciated the compete level and the success he had. So love that. Came out, held his own against these bigger receivers, these Power 5 receivers. He's still probably a day 3 guy. Maybe doesn't fix all their problems, but if they're going to sign one, draft one at corner, sign a bigger veteran. I like Miles Brooks as a developmental player, a guy that maybe in year 2, in year 3 is going to take on a bigger role.
All right. He's a longer guy as well, right? He's 6 foot-ish.
Yeah. Came in at 6 foot 202.
Perfect.
Long arms. I don't remember what his arm measurement was, but it was above average for his size.
So the other position need is tackle. Some of the guys I looked at and I talked about before and started to look at some tape. He played guard his senior year, and it's Jackson Kirkland from Washington. I know you spoke with him. He was playing guard this week out there. I don't know if he switched to tackle as well. Every time I saw him, he was at guard. He looks good, but the Patriots aren't really going to want an interior lineman. I think they're going to look to the outside. So then I talk about Connor Galvin as well. There was one play. It was Kirkland and Galvin. It was communication, like you read about, like you teach, and I loved it because these guys have no idea I mean, they learn the same scheme, but they've been doing the same scheme for 3 days, right? And there was this one play where I
Right.
watched, and they both get in their pass set, or they weren't pass set because they end up run blocking, but they set, they look to each other, they read the line in front of them, and they figure out who's going where, why, and let's go, and they make the block for a touchdown. And that's hard to do with a guy next to you who you've never met before. You don't have any, offensive line chemistry with this guy, but they both know they have to communicate, to get the job done. I love that. That speaks to me anyway as a football player. But what do you think about both those guys, Kirkland and Galvin?
Yeah, Kirkland had a good week. I just, like you said, they shouldn't take a guard that high. And the fact he worked exclusively at guard tells me at the very least the Patriots see him as a guard. It might be the league sees him as a guard, and in the game told them, hey, like, team scouts, they want him working at guard, work him there. But at the very least, the Patriots see him as a guard. So there's that. I if they are going to go interior offensive lineman, the guy that stood out to me, and it's later on, because building depth on the interior couldn't hurt late on day 3. Was, where is he in my notes? He was number 71. There he is, John Gaines from UCLA.
Okay.
Thought he did a really good job. Competitive in one-on-ones. Liked his footwork, getting up to the next level.
Other UCLA guy, Antonio Mafi, stood out to me too. He was also an interior lineman.
A lot of UCLA guys there.
Yeah, there were.
On Galvin, he was probably the best tackle there. Little Nate Solder-ish in terms of his build. He's going to need to put some size on. I don't think he's like an answer. You're not going to start him week 1. If they want to draft him as a project guy, as a third guy, I like it. It wasn't a great offensive line class at this game this year. The one other guy that did stand out, though, and it's the same thing, kind of project, was Luke Haggard from Indiana. The frame was like, he's like 6'6", like 310, like, and he can put muscle on. You got like that. I got like Dalton Wagner from Arkansas, 6'9", 330, right tackle. Like, just get that guy in the building to see what happens. But Galvin was the best tackle there. I think he's an interesting prospect, but I don't know that he's a year 1, like, rookie impact guy.
Okay. Finally, well, you know what I'll do? I have one last name here, but I want to, I guess, give the floor to you again because I saw you tweeted it. But
well, you watched a ton of tape. Like, I want to get your opinion on some guys too.
No, I know, but the reason I'm doing it with this guy is because you gave out your offensive and defensive MVPs on the line and in as skill position. So, who were your MVPs from essentially each position group, if you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I gotta find that tweet real quick here. Well, some of them we've already talked about, like Keitrell Clark, right? He was so good. He was probably the best player there.
Okay.
All things considered. So I was a big fan of his game. Demario Douglas, we talked about. Trey Dean. Blake Whiteheart was my offensive MVP for the East team. They're actually a pair of tight end. Yes, there were a pair of tight ends I liked. Blake Whiteheart from Wake Forest and Daniel Barker from Michigan State. They're both supposed to go on day 3. Like, I don't know that either one's coming in to be a TE1, but as a third tight end, and maybe as a project, you have another year of Hunter Henry. You're not moving on from Hunter Henry for either of these guys, but I just thought I didn't see any weakness in either of their games. And I don't know that there was this over-the-top strength, but like Blake Whiteheart ran good routes. He didn't drop the football. He had the want to as a blocker. Like, he's running through even in individual drills. Like, the motor was high. Barker, kind of the same thing. I think Whiteheart's probably more of a move tight end, a Johnny Smith type. Barker's like bigger, 6'4", long arms, just moved a little more fluidly. Either of those two guys on day 3, I think would make a ton of sense for the Patriots. So those are my skill position MVPs. Front 7, we talked about Connor Galvin.
Yep.
Brenton Cox, who worked with the Patriots, a fascinating player.
That's who I was.
Edge rusher. He's a really good player, and there's a little bit of Matthew Judon in his game, and he said he likes watching Judon. There's not a lot, a little bit of Judon in his game. Now the thing is, he's been kicked out of 2 programs. He got kicked off the Georgia. Now didn't get kicked out of school, and that's an important distinction. He got dismissed from the program at Georgia, transferred to Florida, played there for 3 years. He's really good. Got dismissed this past season from the program. Still graduated.
Okay.
Stayed enrolled in school. So
interesting.
This is where this game
it was for a fight against Georgia, wasn't it?
It was part of it. They never said what it fully was. They said it was multiple things.
Okay. But
he
finished school, so that's something to think about too, like you said.
so getting to work close with him is like Jack Jones last year, right? Jack Jones and
Right.
some red flags. They got to talk to him.
Yeah.
They said it's part of the evaluation. Getting to know him at the Shrine Bowl was important. They got to be, very up close with this guy, with Brenton Cox, and really kind of see what makes him tick and understand what went on. So they may see him as a value pick. That's another guy I think could make a lot of sense in the fact they got that hands-on experience. And then my East Trench MVPs were John Gaines, who I mentioned, the
Yep.
guard center from UCLA. And I can't believe we haven't talked about this guy yet. Moro Ojomo from Texas. He's a defensive tackle. He's wearing number 98, Mike, if that jogs your memory.
Okay. Yeah.
For the East team. So when me and Evan had Galco on Catch 22,
Yep.
It's really interesting in that environment. Everybody's asking, what do you think? What do you think? I like to ask people just who stood out to you and get that unprompted answer.
Yeah.
Because if you ask about a player, they're probably going to be like, oh, yeah, he's looked good. Blah,
He was
blah,
pretty
blah.
good. Yeah.
Who stands out to them without you having to bring them up? And of all the 100, however many players that Galco invited to this game and put the rosters together, the first player he mentioned to me and Evan was Moro Ojomo, and rightfully so. This dude was a wrecking ball at the defensive tackle spot. As a pass rusher, as a run stopper, he was in the backfield more than anybody else. Nobody could block him. 6'3", 310, big, wide frame, just looks super disruptive. He's currently already like a fringe top 50 pick. Okay. He's going to be in the conversation to be one of the, not the top, Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter's the number one, right?
But in terms of interior defensive linemen, think like last year, right? We had Jordan Davis, and we all knew Jordan Davis was special. Right. I was saying he was going to run sub 5. Evan laughed me off this show for saying he was going to run sub 5.
Yep.
But then there was what was his name? Travis Jones from UConn.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Kind of like was that next guy and
shot up the board every week. It felt like
he probably didn't get as much love as he should have because Jordan Davis was just so good that everybody was focused on him. Ojomo, man, if he can show teams at pro days and stuff what he did this week, yeah, I could see him being a top 50 pick. And Patriots right there at 46, or if they trade down in the second round, they got a good look at this guy. He was just so freaking explosive. And then, look, if they want a guy like that and they don't want to pick him in the top 50, Dante Stills from West Virginia.
This has been your guy for years, right?
Yeah.
Haven't you been all over him?
And I talked to him, and it was really interesting. I asked him why he kept going back to school, and he said he wasn't ready as a teammate. He wanted to be a better leader. He wanted to be better at studying film. He wanted to be better in the meeting room. It wasn't necessarily the on the field stuff. Mm-hmm. It was all the things you don't see on tape. And he felt like he did that last year, is what he told me. And he did, I think, have somewhat of a leadership role at the game. He did seem to be a guy players were gravitating towards. But yeah, he was excellent. I don't know that he's the run defender Ojomo is. He's a little bit smaller. 6'4", 290. I liken him to Christian Barmore. Not at that level, but that sort of player.
Yeah.
And when Barmore went down last year, right? Daniel Qualley stepped in. Daniel Qualley is a free agent right now. Mm-hmm. So that next, that backup pass rushing defensive tackle, I don't know that Stills a 3-down player, at least not right now. But that backup pass rush defensive tackle, Stills would be really nice to have behind Barmore. And even playing the two of them on the field together, I think there'd be a package where they could have some success there as well. So Ojomo and Stills, two other guys that really stood out to me.
All right. Well, before we wrap, I do want to quickly mention our partners over at Rocket Money because
hang on, let me get one more guy in because I should mention this guy. And it was reported since we were there, Tyrus Wheat from Mississippi State, that the Patriots are interested in him.
Okay.
I can see it. 3 down, edge setting, defensive end, can rush the passer a little bit, disciplined player. Think like Montez Sweat, all these guys that have come from Mississippi State, they have a type for their edge.
As soon as I hear,
every
time I hear and think of Tyrus Wheat, I think of Montez Sweat.
Yeah. So, I mean, he just, and Montez Sweat's the one who comes to mind, but there's been a bunch of guys that have come through there. That's who he is. And I've been waiting for the Patriots to draft one of these Mississippi State edge guys because they look like such a good fit in their defense.
Yeah.
The report is they like Tyrus Wheat. I believe that. I think they showed it on the field this week. He's a name Patriots fan should know.
Keep it in mind, Tyra Sweet. All right, before we go, Alex, quickly on Rocket Money.
Yep.
I guarantee you don't know how much your subscriptions really cost. There's something in the news as well now about Netflix that you're not going to be able to share accounts anymore.
Boo.
So keep that in mind, boo Netflix. But that's just going to add to your bill because you're gonna have to buy a Netflix account if you want to keep watching Stranger Things. Most Americans think that they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, when actually it's closer to $200. I no longer do that because I use Rocket Money. It used to be known as Truebill. They keep all your subscriptions in one place. You can quickly click the cancel button, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Go to rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat to save hundreds and cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now. That's rocketmoney.com/PatsBeat. Cancel those unnecessary subscriptions today. That'll do it for us. That's not the lower third I wanted. That's Tom Brady. Back to the Shrine Bowl. Alex, we're going to be back tomorrow, me and Alex. We are going to wrap up the Shrine Bowl, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. We did a lot of talking tonight. Tomorrow we're going to do Q&A. What are your questions on the Shrine Bowl? What are your questions on the Senior Bowl? Anything coming up, Patriots, we'll open up the floor. Sound like a plan, Alex? Thursday, tomorrow? All good?
Yep.
Perfect.
Might be a little bit on the later end. Working on a special Brady related project over at the Sports Hub. So
look at that.
We'll keep you
Okay.
posted though.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted. Make sure you subscribe on Patriots Press Pass. Follow us on Twitter at @RealAlexBarth, at Mike Kadlick. Read all our stuff. We'll keep you posted when we go. Stay tuned, Patriots Press Press. Greg Bedard and Nick Cattles coming up after this to talk about all the dysfunction that had happened with the Herald Report. So we talk about that. They'll handle the drama. So